Please be seated. At first, I almost missed it. It was tucked over in a corner, almost as an afterthought. The exhibit was a show of art from the women's Ivy League colleges, those some people call the Seven Sisters. There were many beautiful and exciting works included, with much to draw our attention. Famous artists, big canvases and sculptures, powerful colors. This sculpture was about 3 feet high, in simple silver metal. It sat on a pedestal that put my eyes at about the same height as the sculpture's subjects. It was those eyes that grabbed my attention and then stopped me in my tracks. The work showed 2 men facing each other. One was holding the other's arms, leaning in close to see him better. His gaze was intense and absorbed, a searching concentration on the other's face. Looking at it, you understood that this man not only knew every detail of that face, he cherished them. The sculpture reminded me of the scenes we see at airports and bus stations, ports and train depots. Metal had been shaped and formed to illustrate the reunion of people who have been apart, who have been away from another who is treasured. This sculpture depicted, it radiated love. A placard on the pedestal's base gave its name. The prodigal son comes home. That sculpture was so powerful that it shaped my understanding of today's story ever since. It reminded and convinced me that the center of this story is love. It may not surprise you to hear me say that. It has often been suggested that this story is misnamed. The dictionary defines prodigal as one who spends or gives lavishly or foolishly. So some suggest that instead of focusing on the prodigal son, who spends foolishly, this story would be better named after the prodigal father, who gives so lavishly. That Jesus, the one who literally died to love us, is saying, "You are so cherished," to each of us this morning through this story. So how do the people in our tale relate to this lavish gospel of grace? Perhaps they can help us to consider our own responses to love this big. The younger son certainly begins as a lost child. He asks for his inheritance while he is still alive, treating his own father as if he were dead. He then runs off and is irresponsible. When his belly is empty, he connives a plan to fill it, seeing his father once again simply as a way to meet his own needs. He finds that all he needs to do is come home and accept forgiveness. Who gets a welcome or a welcome back into God's kingdom? Jesus tells us this morning that anyone who even dares approach will be welcomed. The older son is a lost child too. He is diligent, responsible, and hardworking, and feels unappreciated for his efforts. He is uncomfortable with his father's enthusiastic love for his brother. As one writer puts it, he has been rewarded his whole life for getting an A on every test, and he knocks himself out to earn these grades. And then he hears that in the end, it's a pass-fail test. And the only way to pass is to receive the grace of God. It's not about what you achieve. It's about what you receive. The father's invitation is for the elder son to come to the celebration. It may be harder, perhaps, to accept grace if we somehow believe it can be earned. That the reason for our hard work is to be worthy of God's love. Today's story opened with the Pharisees and the scribes criticizing Jesus. They are resentful because tax collectors and sinners are drawing near to Jesus and listening to him. Like the elder brother, they too have been diligent keepers of the law. And also like that brother, they deserve praise and appreciation for their faithfulness. But they sense that Jesus too is lavish in his acceptance of those who have not kept the law and yet are rushing home to find forgiveness and welcome from God. The Pharisees think that they know more about God and God's will than Jesus does. That they can judge who deserves God's mercy, who has done enough to earn God's forgiveness. And this morning, Jesus confronts their hard-heartedness. These older sons have never left their father's side, yet they do not know him. Many of us in church have done our best over the years to serve God faithfully. We try to keep the rules and guidelines of our faith. But like the older son, we can miss the God we claim to be serving. There is always the danger of coming to feel more of an obligation to do the good things we are doing than a sense of celebration and gratitude for the God who has been so generous to us. We don't know what happens at the end of this story. Does the younger son stay around after the welcome home party? Has his heart really changed because of his experience? Or has he just come for the room and board? Has he had a change of heart? And will his future actions reveal that change? And what about the older brother? Does his father's pleading soften his heart and stir him to join the celebration inside? Will he let bygones be bygones? Greet and hug his younger brother and welcome him home? Who among us has not fallen back into old patterns after making amends for the past and resolving to change? Can we really say that we have allowed the experience of God's forgiveness to settle into and change our hearts? The issue is whether the Father's words and actions have penetrated the hearts of his sons. Do they realize who this Father is to them? He has gone out to meet with both of his sons. To the first, to greet and embrace him on the road, and to the second, to plead with him to open his heart to his brother and to celebrate with everyone at his brother's return. This story reminds us that there is a part of each brother in each of us. It shows the importance of getting to know the God who is both a forgiving parent delighted by our service and a father who welcomes us when we stray and try to come home. If the sons let the Father into their hearts, they will be changed. Both will realize that their Father loves each of them in different ways and for different reasons. Why would the younger son ever want to run away again from such love, especially after the unearned forgiveness he has received? Why would the older son continue to resent what his brother received when he himself has experienced acceptance and understanding from his father? The father doesn't want the older boy to feel duty-bound like a servant, but to accept his words. My son, you are here with me always. Everything I have is yours. The Father has given all of himself to both sons. Will they in turn appreciate and be changed by the total gift they are given, despite their own shortcomings? We need to finish the story of the prodigal son in our own lives. The Pharisees and scribes accused Jesus. This man welcomes sinners and eats with them. At this Eucharist, Jesus continues to reconcile all of us sinners, older and younger sons and daughters alike, to God. He welcomes us and gives us himself as food. Some of us have made the big trip away from God's loving embrace. Others of us have been diligent and observant at our tasks, but perhaps not appreciative of what we already have. But whatever our status, we are invited to God's banquet now. That sculpture's searching gaze of absolute love has stayed with me, reminding me of how lavishly God loves me and everyone. Love beyond any measure that I could ever find. Nothing can earn the forgiveness we receive, no matter which kind of sinner we happen to be at the moment. We shall just have to let it all sink in and soften our hearts. Then, when others come seeking our forgiveness, we will mirror the God who came out to meet us on the road, rejoicing in our return.
Amen.